The only way that we can regain it is to tell the unvarnished truth. Net zero by 2050 is impossible.
Because net zero is of course not easy, but it's a huge opportunity to boost our growth, our jobs and our economy.
What happens when a politician can't answer the most fundamental question about their own policy? We witnessed exactly that when Lee Anderson cornered Keir Starmer on the actual temperature reduction from net zero policies.
And I expect sensible answers, but all I get is glazed expressions and waffle and from the opposite benches.
And received nothing but awkward silence in return. Labour's climate agenda will cost British taxpayers billions and transform our economy. Yet when asked about its measurable impact, their leader couldn't provide a single figure. Is this the type of leadership we deserve on such a consequential issue? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. It was 30 seconds that sent shockwaves through Westminster. In the midst of what should have been a routine parliamentary exchange, Lee Anderson MP delivered a question so deceptively simple that it threw the Prime Minister completely off balance. If we became net zero tomorrow, by how much would it reduce the Earth's temperature?
If we became net zero tomorrow, by how much would it reduce the Earth's temperature by? Simple question.
With that single inquiry, the facade of political certainty crumbled before our eyes. What makes this moment so revealing isn't just the question itself, but the careful calculation behind it. Anderson wasn't playing political games. He was conducting a public examination of substance versus rhetoric. His question stripped away the comfortable blanket of vague promises and forced a reckoning with measurable reality. This wasn't about party politics. It was about basic accountability. The physical response from Starmer told us everything before he even opened his mouth. His body language betrayed a man suddenly thrown off script. The hesitation, the uncomfortable shifting, and most tellingly, that desperate glance toward his cabinet colleagues seeking rescue. These weren't the actions of a leader confidently defending well-researched policy. They were the instinctive reactions of someone caught without preparation on a fundamental aspect of their own agenda. When Starmer finally did respond, his strategy was straight from the political playbook of deflection. Rather than addressing the actual question about temperature reduction, he pivoted entirely to economic talking points. Net zero is of course not easy, but it's a huge opportunity to boost our growth, our jobs, and our economy. Notice what's missing. Any mention of environmental impact, the very premise of the policy itself.
Because net zero is of course not easy, but it's a huge opportunity to boost our growth, our jobs and our economy.
It's like promoting an expensive new medicine solely based on the colour of its packaging, while avoiding any discussion of whether it actually cures the disease. This exchange perfectly exemplifies the growing chasm between political promises and measurable outcomes that defines our current political landscape. The British public is being asked to shoulder enormous costs for net zero policies, yet their political representatives cannot, or will not, articulate what tangible environmental benefits these sacrifices will actually deliver.
Mr. Speaker, I come to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, every week to ask sensible questions.
The contradictions don't end there. Within Labour's own ranks, the environmental policy appears to be a house divided against itself. The public disagreement between Rachel Reeves and Ed Miliband over Heathrow's expansion plans reveals a deeper truth. When idealistic climate commitments collide with economic realities, pragmatism often wins the internal battle. Reeves overruling Miliband's environmental objections demonstrates that even within the same cabinet, there's a stark divide between climate rhetoric and economic decision-making. Anderson's post-debate assessment to GB News was brutally straightforward about Starmer's failure. It wasn't a response at all. He further diagnosed the Prime Minister's dilemma with surgical precision.
And I understand the member for Clacton wants to be Prime Minister. He can't even lead a party that fits in the back of a taxi.
He either couldn't answer the question, or he knew the answer and was too embarrassed to answer the question. This analysis cuts to the heart of why this exchange matters so profoundly. What made Anderson's temperature question so devastating was that it created an impossible choice for Starmer. Answer truthfully that UK-only net zero policies would have a negligible impact on global temperatures, and he undermines public support for costly domestic initiatives. Alternatively, reveal a lack of basic understanding about his own flagship policy, destroying his credibility as a serious climate advocate.
Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Prime Minister a very simple question on behalf of all the net zero sceptics.
As well, this is a very, very poor government, by the way, Mike. Their majority is built on sand, and we've seen it already, the sleaze and the corruption.
Caught between these two politically toxic admissions, Starmer chose the third path, avoidance, which ultimately proved just as damaging. The implications extend far beyond this single exchange. This moment reveals a fundamental disconnect between ambitious climate targets and the practical realities of implementation. Even Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has now entered the fray, declaring that achieving net zero by 2050 is impossible, without significant economic repercussions.
Making promises and not delivering is exactly the reason that the political class has lost trust. The only way that we can regain it is to tell the unvarnished truth. Net zero by 2050 is impossible.
When political opponents as diverse as Anderson and Badenoch find common ground in questioning the practicality of these policies, it signals a shifting landscape in the climate debate. What we witnessed in that parliamentary exchange wasn't merely political theatre. It was a rare moment of clarity in a debate too often clouded by vague aspirations and emotional appeals. Anderson's question pierced the bubble of political rhetoric and demanded something increasingly rare in modern governance: a straight answer about measurable results. What we're witnessing in British politics isn't just a failure of communication, it's a crisis of trust. Recent polling data reveals a deep public scepticism about climate policy promises, with voters increasingly doubting whether their elected officials truly understand the measures they champion. This trust deficit extends far beyond Westminster's green benches. While national figures offer vague climate commitments without measurable targets, it's worth noting that some local leaders have taken a different approach.
This useless Labour government are doing the impossible. They're actually making things worse.
These officials have implemented climate initiatives with transparent metrics and clear goals, demonstrating that political honesty on environmental issues is possible, if uncommon. The growing chasm between public expectation and political delivery demands more than theatrical exchanges in Parliament. We need a fundamental reset in how climate policies are presented to the public, with honest assessments of costs, benefits and limitations.
And like you say, Dan, the ads from last week were quite shameful. I'm not bothered actually, because it does us a favour, it makes him look like a child.
Until our leaders can speak plainly about both the sacrifices required and the specific outcomes expected, climate policy will remain trapped in a cycle of grandiose promises followed by disillusioned public rejection.